The educator Dr. Maria Montessori once said,
The child developing harmoniously and the adult improving himself at his side make a very exciting and attractive picture.
"Welcome to Montessori Education with me, Jesse McCarthy, where we talk raising children and educating students while bettering ourselves right alongside them." Hey everyone, so on the show today is a really thoughtful and practical Montessorian named Christina Clemer, and we'll be talking about how to Montessori at home with younger children, from sensibly structuring the day, to doing academics, to prepping and eating meals, to just getting outside. A quick intro on Christina. She lives in Austin, Texas with her husband and two children. So we got James, who is 3.5 years old, and Lila at 15 months. And so Christina was a Montessori child, and all the way from age 4 through 8th grade. And her mom is actually a Montessori teacher, and so is her sister and her brother-in-law. So she is part of a Montessori family for sure. But Christina didn't just jump right into Montessori as an adult. So she was in business consulting for years before she got back to her Montessori roots, as she puts it, and became a trained Montessori teacher herself. Now, these days, Christina spends a lot of time writing on Montessori while also being a mom at home with her kids. Now, I personally found Christina through an article she had written on schedules and really structure, and I thought, man, this woman really knows how to get to the point, and I could just tell she lived what she preached, so to speak. So I just reached out to her about potentially coming on the show and having a conversation, and thankfully for me, and maybe you guys out there will see what you think, she was more than happy to hop on. I deliberately kept our discussion short today, but I think Christina helped to pack it with a lot of value. So let us hop in. So hello, Christina. Happy to have you on.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Cool. And as I had mentioned earlier, I had found you, I was just reading, articles as normal, but when this COVID first hit, and there was an article you had put out on routine or on building a schedule that I was like, wow, I really like this one. I want to share this. So I thought, let's hop in and talk about routine, because that's a huge topic in Montessori. And I know that we think of it as, there's a combination of freedom and structure, but I think some people go way too far on the structured side. And then there's some that would be like, oh, we just do whatever we want through the whole day. So what's your take on this whole, should I have a routine? Should I have a schedule? What's your take?
Sure. So I think that as adults, we love schedules because they give us a sense of control, and that can be really comforting, especially during something like the current situation. Mm-hmm. But in general, I think simple, kind of flexible routines work a lot better for children. So when this whole stay-at-home situation first started, there were some really, really detailed schedules put out, kind of scheduling 30-minute blocks of the child's whole day. And I think, obviously that's not in line with Montessori and doesn't give them a chance to really choose work and play for themselves. Mm-hmm. So in our house, we have a pretty simple routine, but it's really consistent. So the children do know what to expect. They spend the early mornings with my husband. So that's the time where I kind of get my work done. And then at 8 o'clock every day we switch, and I have breakfast with them and help them get dressed. And then from there, it's really open-ended until lunchtime. So that's a lot of outdoor play, or sometimes we'll go for neighborhood walks or bake together. But I try to sit back and really let them choose what to work and play on. So they know when to expect to be with their dad and when to be with me. And then they also have independent playtime where we're both working. But within those blocks, they have 2 to 3 hour blocks where they can kind of choose what to work on.
So would you say like an element of that sounds like you use the word expectation. So it's as if, oh yeah, I know I'm with dad at this time, but beyond that, I have a lot of flexibility, something like that.
Right, exactly. And it's actually been really helpful in a way, this stay-at-home situation. Before, when they would kind of randomly be with their dad, if he happened to work from home or had a day off and I would be working, they would act out a lot, especially my 3-year-olds. I think just because he wasn't used to it and he didn't know it was coming and is kind of rebelling against that. But now their behavior is a lot better when they kind of know that transition is coming every day.
Yeah. So, it's funny because just thinking about even dogs, like there's, like dogs know, and I'm not saying dogs are exactly like kids, of course, but, dogs know when you're supposed to be home and so forth. But if you popped in at a random time, they can go nuts. Like, they're just like, what's going on? So there's
Right.
something to that. Like it's kind of, we talk about in Montessori that children crave order. So I think sometimes you can go overboard with that and be like, oh, well, children crave order, so let's do 1 hour blocks and then you would do exactly this. But they need some order, but not, crazy structured every minute we know what you're doing.
Right. Exactly. I think they need to know what's coming and what's expected of them,
Mhm.
where they're going to be kind of, and who's going to be with them. But they also need the freedom to choose. Like, we don't need to tell them like, now it's time to play Play-Doh and now we're doing an art project. They can choose what they want to do.
Yeah. So given, the different ages of your two children, have you found, what distinctions have you found in terms of how much each one needs in that way? Or have you found them both the same, even though they're completely different ages?
I would say that's a great question. My son is obviously more independent. He's 3.5.
Mhm.
He can really entertain himself for very long stretches of time. And even like if my husband or I are available to be with him, sometimes he'll go off on his own in his room and do his own thing. My daughter, 15 months old, she's pretty independent outside,
Mhm.
and inside she needs more help, just getting started on things and um, being safe inside.
So when you say, because that's interesting, I would, some parents would say the opposite, like, well, I would never think of my child being safe and independent outside. So what are you doing for parents out there that have infants or early toddlers? Like, how do you feel comfortable with her being independent outside? Like, what's going on?
I mean, we have a fenced-in backyard,
Okay.
and it's set up for the children. I think something about the outdoor environment I found with both my kids just makes them really calm and kind of more peaceful. She never seems like antsy out there or bored. She just wanders around, looking at nature and playing in the
Yeah.
sandbox and kind of more on her own. Inside, she wants more interaction from us.
So that's interesting, particularly given kind of what's going on right now. So I know there are a lot of parents like, well, we can't go outside and stuff. But I mean, my approach is like, you better find somewhere to go outside, like drive off
Right.
if you have to go distance. So is that your take too, or you're like, no, we got to stay inside? Like, what's your take?
We're outside all the time. I mean, in normal circumstances, and especially now. And part of it's just selfish. My husband and I both love being outside. So from the
Yeah.
time that we're born, we're going hiking with them and things like that. But we spend at least 3 or 4 hours outside a day. And I mean,
Wow.
we're lucky because we live in Austin and the weather's, quote unquote good for almost all year.
Yeah.
But even a couple weeks ago, it was thunderstorming all day. And as soon as the lightning stopped, we went for just a little walk around the block. But, they were
Mhm.
both walking, so it took forever because I have a 1-year-old.
Yep.
My little girl's rain boot fell off and was like floating down the street. But they had the best time. It was like you could tell they thought it was such an adventure. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of work, but we have nothing else to do right now. So it's okay if it takes 30 minutes for them to put their boots on and get raincoats on.
Yeah, so that's cool because there's a lot more time on people's hand. Well, I should say this: there's a lot more time. I mean,
Yes.
it's because
Yes.
some parents, working parents, it is not.
Yes.
I have a lot more time.
No.
So, do you, even in saying that, because that sounds beautiful, like I'm thinking of you with your kids and this. Oh, look at the shoe went. But then other parents, if they try to like pack this in at 5:30 when they get home from work or something, like that's not a good idea. So,
No.
do you,
No.
how do you suggest or think about it with parents like that work and they come home, like should they be doing this on the weekends, or what's your suggestion?
I think, yes, I think the weekends. I think it's so important for kids not to be rushed, especially young kids, because it never goes well for them or the parents. And if you're trying to fit these activities in after work, there's just no way that's not going to be rushed. I think it's more important to just be together and get them to bed on time if they have to wake up early for school.
And I mean, in this case, when you say like early for school, obviously they're not, well, I guess some people are actually going back to school, interestingly. So,
Oh,
but
I didn't even know that. Wow.
yeah, some of the younger children, because there's in many
Oh,
states, preschool and younger can go in, but then they'll limit the number
okay.
of children and so forth. But generally speaking, with this, I'm curious. It sounded like even with that rainy day thing, that was just spontaneous. You guys just went out. Do you
Yes.
suggest any type of ordered events? I remember I was talking with you, and I think you said you used to, before COVID and everything, you'd have like one day that was, hey, we're definitely doing this, or like, how do you
Yes.
structure going out, doing stuff outside?
Right. We normally have, I mean, I use the term calendar very loosely. It's not that formal, but we have like a loose weekly calendar. Usually Monday we have play dates with the same set of friends each week. And Tuesdays we go to the library. Fridays we go to the grocery store. I try to only have one day a week with anything that's actually scheduled. Like we have to be here at 10 o'clock
Mhm.
just because I find it easier for myself and young children just to kind of be a little more flexible than that. But how we kind of work that into a routine is just we go somewhere at the same time every day. So normally around, if we're going somewhere that day around 9 o'clock after they've had breakfast and gotten dressed, that's where we would go do something. And then in the afternoons, I always leave it open for them just to have like free play or work time.
And then, so in terms of like right now with what's going on, have you just switched, like maybe it was before it was the library, which was packed with people. And now obviously you're not going to a packed library. So you
Right.
just switched what you're doing, but you're still going outside to go somewhere.
Yes. We
Okay.
usually start outside just because that's where we all like being the best.
Yeah.
So whether that's, sometimes we drive to a hiking trail, but a lot of times it's just kind of in our neighborhood or outside in the backyard.
Okay. Now, I know your children are both small or young. So I've been hearing a lot from parents of older children in particular. So once you start to get into 5 and above, you know, the stressors come on. We all have this anxiety about academics. Is my child learning enough? So, you know, I mean, you have younger children, so that anxiety might not have yet, you know, popped up for you. And
Right.
then, but you know, definitely parents who have not had Montessori training all their life and been in Montessori all their life, that's a real stressor. So, you know, this might sound great, like, oh, my child gets to play and do this, but where do you see academics or real, you know, Montessori materials coming into all of this? Like, how does that play a role for you?
Right. So like you said, my kids are really young. So I do have a few of the Montessori materials for James. Like we have the movable alphabet that he likes working with and some 3-part cards. But I mean, I don't consider what I'm doing right now homeschool at all. It's just kind of following their interests and fitting learning in as it comes.
Mhm.
He's supposed to start preschool in the fall. So if that does not happen, I will definitely get some more of the academic materials, some more math and language materials. And I mean, how I think I'll do it is just have a few designated shelves, and one of the blocks of time will be choosing work from those shelves instead of just kind of playing Legos all morning. So I will never tell him like, now it's time to do math and now we're going to read a book and now we're going to do this, but we'll encourage him to work with those materials more as he gets older.
And it's
Um,
even you just saying that's pretty fascinating, because you said, oh, it's just like he's playing with Legos now or something like that. And there's a time, it's structured, like, oh, he's playing during this time. But in Montessori, I think a lot of people, I'm using the term academic so that, you know, people say, oh, you know, children are really learning stuff in Montessori. But, you know, that Legos, a child's learning something with them. And then as they develop, then like you said, you just replace it with different activities, but it still
right.
feels like play, but it's more, well, now they're doing math or now they're doing science, but to them, it's very similar,
Right.
right?
It's actually really funny the amount of quote unquote academic learning he's gotten out of Legos. That's like his obsession, his passion in life.
Nice.
When he was a little toddler, someone gave him a set of Duplos, like the toddler Legos,
Mhm.
that had like the ABCs printed on them. So not necessarily a toy I would have bought him, like an ABC toy like that. But
Yeah.
he wound up learning all of the phonetic letter sounds from them at 18 months because he would ask me every day,
Wow.
what's this? What's this? I would tell him every day the sounds. And then now that he's older, he does like kind of little math with them. So like I have
Oh.
2 white bricks and 4 black bricks. That makes 6 bricks. How else can we make 6? He's always asking me things like that with his Legos.
Wow.
It's
That's
funny. Yeah.
and that's awesome, because there's this kind of dogmatic approach, like you got to ensure, and I know we've talked about, you have definitely like, oh, I like wooden materials, natural materials, but
Right.
you can't be this like crazed, I've got to get everything out of my house.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. And I love that like it came from, this was James that it happened with.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. It comes from him. Like some
Right.
child attaches to it, and then look at how much you gain from it.
Right. Exactly.
Uh,
And on the flip side, I mean, I've bought wooden toys, some of which they love, but some of which he has no interest in, and you can't
yeah,
force that. They're just
yep.
drawn to what they're drawn to.
I know. And I could just see a parent. You're like, oh, but it's wood, James. We love wood. And it's like,
Exactly.
oh, calm down, Evina.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
would you say, I know you were talking about, you know, that when they get older, you might have a shelf or something like that. And I know, you know, like, how do you go about picking things? Like, how many would you have? Like, what's your approach to that? I know, because we can go the far end, which is, you know, you've seen those homes and some parents are struggling where there's just crap everywhere. And
Right.
then on the other end, you can get, oh, we have a perfectly Montessori house, and there's like 2 things on the shelf, and
Right.
everything else is just, you know, bare white everything, you know? So how do you deal with that? How do you think about that?
We're really big on rotating the toys in our house because I really do hate clutter. Um, But at the same time, I mean, he's the first grandchild and we have a lot of gifts from grandparents, whether or not we buy
Yeah.
any toys. So if I see him not playing with something for a couple weeks, or Lila, either of them, I just put it away in the closet and put something else out, because it is important to me that they know like everything has a spot, and that way they can clean it up on their own and I'm not chasing after them stepping on little toys all the time.
Yeah. So do you find like, was it a struggle at all for you to get, you both your kids, Lila and James, just putting things back in their place, or did it work naturally because of the way that you set the environment up?
It's fun. It honestly happened naturally, like from the time James was a little toddler and Lila's just kind of starting to do it. He would put things away because it was easy. I mean, he had like,
Yeah.
10 toys in his room and he knew where they went. He's also very orderly, just kind of by nature.
Hmm.
But
And the same
occasionally now it's
thing,
a struggle.
is the
Sorry.
same thing happen with Lila or?
I would say not quite as much yet. She's
Mm,
starting to put things away, but
mhm.
not as much on her own. Like we'll kind of start doing it and she'll help us.
Okay.
Um, I don't remember the exact age when he really started doing that on his own. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm raising this too because this is, obviously many of the people that are listening are already into Montessori. There every now and again there'll be a few that have no clue, and then some are like, "Oh, I'm
Okay.
just curious about Montessori." But for parents that have no clue about Montessori, the idea that kids are just putting things back in their place when it's just so foreign, you know.
Right.
And I'm wondering, just given how you're saying you yourself like order, it seems when
Yes.
we set this environment up for children, not that they're all going to be exactly the same, some might struggle a little bit more, but generally speaking, it's just a natural thing. It's not like now we are doing discipline,
Right,
right?
exactly. Exactly, and I think it's funny, I think people think it's easier for kids if you just have, like, a big bin of toys, and they can just toss them all in there, which makes sense in theory, but I think they seem to get a real satisfaction out of putting something in its proper place, like, "Oh, this goes right here, and I know where it goes, and I'm gonna put it back so I know where it is next time." So I
Yeah.
think they're more likely to put it away if it has a certain spot.
And I think this is a good example of one of those cases where actually knowing some theory or some science or understanding behind child development is so important because, like, you and I were trained in Montessori, and it's like we know that children crave order at this age.
Right.
So where I think a lot, I mean, if you just think about the general sense of children at around 3, y- normal human beings outside of our Montessori bubble do not think of order. Like that's not what comes to mind.
Right, not
You
at all,
know,
it's
it's like
chaotic.
madness and chaos. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, actually thinking about that with Montessori, I mean, it sounds like you've had Montessori is just everywhere in your life, from parents, yourself, your sister, and your brother-in-law. So you've got it all over the place. Is there anything within Montessori's framework, with her method, or what you've seen in the classroom, or just a quote of hers that's stood out and really, I don't know, had an effect throughout your life, or is it just all of it, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think especially no, not I was gonna say especially with little children, but really with kids of all ages, I think how meaningful real world experiences are for them has made the biggest difference in my parenting, like from learning that in the classroom and then putting that into place in parenting. So in the classroom, of course we had Montessori style snack where they would serve themselves, but also sometimes we would invite the children to help kind of cook the snack for the rest of the class, like shuck the corn or get vegetables from the garden, wash and chop them and things like that. And you could really see that those experiences meant the most for them
Yeah.
and helped them connect with the adults and build relationships the most, more than anything on the shelf. And I've found that to be true with my we were having car trouble about a year ago, and my husband's kind of a do-it-himself kind of guy. So,
Mhm.
watched some YouTube videos and was trying to fix the car, and he invited James to help him. And it was so important to him that he still says he wants to be an auto mechanic, and that's like the only experience he
Wow.
has with cars whatsoever.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't, in just you raising that, because I think for me as well, that's such a huge part of Montessori. And I just think how much that is left out of traditional normal, whether it's daycare, preschool, all the way up to high school.
Right.
It's just left out. It's not,
Yeah.
it's, and I, in high school, actually, I had a auto mechanic class that I took for
Oh,
two
cool.
years. Oh yeah. And I mean, it's so rare where I grew up in, Orange County, this rich, affluent
Yeah.
area, for them to have this autumn. And of course, the guy was like this edgy guy that just spoke his mind. So it was like, but it stood out to me as one of the best classes I took out of all of my schooling,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
And I think it's like you're getting dirty, you're doing things that are actually, quote, real world, as you're putting it. Um, And it is fascinating, I think, because as a contrast to just quote academic learning or so forth, it really sticks with you. As it sounds like James, I want to be an auto mechanic one time,
Yeah, exactly. It's just,
you
okay.
know, it's
Yeah,
huge.
it's
And
really
I'm
important.
curious, have you experienced this? I know in whether it's in the classroom or at home, because I know there's often food conflict with children. Like that's one of the biggest ones. And I think I've noted on the show before that the easiest solution to this is just cook it or make it with your child, and almost every
Right,
time they're gonna like it. Have you
right.
had that experience, or what in terms of food, like what's occurred with food that you think is positive with children in this way?
Sure. I totally agree. I love doing food prep with kids and involving them making dinner. My son is like a natural born foodie. He loves all foods, like weird
Right.
foods. So we didn't ever have to deal with that, but he does we love cooking together. And my daughter was naturally a little pickier, but she's coming around. She's still not really able to help too much with preparing food,
Yeah.
but she's around while we're doing it together. And I mean, I just kind of say this is what we're eating. And, I
And
don't
then do
like
it.
make separate meals for them with
Now,
that kind of.
when you say she was a little picky, I'm sure there's parents on here or teachers that would like to have the insight. Like, what did you do that you would consider Montessori-like, or even if it's your own creative element? Like, what did you do to help this along the way?
Sure. I mean, we always involve her in family meals. She's not like eating separately away from us in a high chair.
Mhm.
We always eat meals together. So I think her seeing us eat the foods, and especially seeing James eat the foods because he's her hero, of course.
Yeah.
Um, but also I mean, I think limit setting at mealtime is the same as limit setting any other time. So we have rules. If you're throwing your food, you're done.
Yeah.
Mealtime's over. You can eat or do something else. But
That even, it's curious you say that, because I'm very much into freedom within limits, and, children
right,
can do so much, but there's limits. Just, I think people that are not used to Montessori hearing you say, is like, what, dinner is over? But wouldn't you sit down and talk with your child about the importance of this? Like, so how do you balance, acknowledging emotions with, again, here's my limit. Like, how do you deal with that?
right. I mean, I would remind her one time, if you're throwing your food, dinner's going to be over. But I'm
Mhm.
not going to say it again and again because then the limit is meaningless. So I would
Yeah.
say dinner is done. Honestly, usually she's fine with it because she really is done eating if she's throwing
Yeah.
her food. But if she did get upset, I would, you know, show empathy to her. Like, I see you're really upset. The dinner time's over. We'll have another time to eat in the morning with breakfast. We can't
Yeah.
throw our food. I would certainly be with her and not get mad at her, but I do think it's important to hold the limits.
And I like, basically you just said something like observation. Well, most of the
Right.
time when she's throwing her food, dinner is over.
Right. She's really
So
done.
I like that, because throwing food as an adult, if I'm sitting at a table and like my buddy just tossed something, like, dude, this is inappropriate. But
Right.
for an infant or a toddler, that might just be the sign that, oh yeah, dinner's over.
Right.
Like, obviously we
Exactly.
don't want that at 5 years old, but at that point, that's just an observation for us to be like, oh, it's over.
Right. And I mean, it
Yeah.
probably means that I've missed her initial cues. I was busy talking with
Yeah.
James or my husband, and I didn't notice that she had stopped eating or she does the little baby signs, doing the all done sign. So she's like, no, guys, I'm really done. She's just making
This
it.
is for real. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool. Well, this is awesome. I think there's a few little points in here that I'm thinking are pretty powerful within a few anecdotes that say a lot. So I'm happy we kind of got these out here.
Thank
Is there anything, like, I wanted to make this short so the parents at home can listen, or even teachers, because they're a little bit crazed today, if I'm sure a lot of them.
you.
Uh,
Yes.
is there anything that you might want to throw in? I don't care where it comes from, that you want to tell parents, or just something you think is cool, or an anecdote, anything.
Sure. I have sort of a story I like from when I first started teaching. I hadn't taken the training yet. I was an assistant.
Cool.
And there was this little boy on the playground who was kind of like, I mean, quote unquote, you would say like misbehaving. He was taking water from the water cooler and like dumping it on people, or dumping it in the sandbox, dumping it on
Mhm.
himself. And I had asked him like 10 times to stop, and it was completely useless. And then my kind of mentor teacher, who I love, came over, and she's like, Charlie, it looks like you want to work with water. Like, let's get a watering can and water the garden.
Yeah.
And he did it for the rest of playtime. It was like 30 minutes. He was totally
Wow.
peaceful and focused. And it's always stuck with me when I see a child misbehaving. Like, what are they wanting? What are they needing to do right now? Like, how can I help them find a
Yeah.
purpose within what they're trying to accomplish here?
Yeah.
Um,
I really like that story. And I think how many of us early on. I mean, me as a teacher, it's always it's like all you see is the quote misbehavior.
Right.
You can't. And what's cool, I didn't know. So you were an assistant first, huh?
Yes, for about a year, because the timing of when I decided to become a teacher wasn't transitioning.
It's not because my recommendation, if it's possible, is always become an assistant first before being a teacher. And so do you agree with that? Or you're like, I mean, it sounds like it really helped you, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. The head of my school suggested that also, first of all, just to make sure if it's really something you want to do, because before you take the commitment of training. But also it was great for me because I got to be in the toddler class as well as the 3 to 6 class. So I got some experience with kind of where the kids have been coming from. That's been really helpful for me.
I'm happy you raised that, because I think a lot of times as teachers, we get stuck in our own classrooms and forget that, hey, it's good to know where these children came from earlier on or where they're going afterwards.
Right.
So that's huge. And I would say that even if you're not, for people out there, even if you're not going to become a Montessori teacher, like, man, spend some time. Just call up your local Montessori school, even the one that you're not at. It doesn't matter, and say, hey, can I sit in a class? I mean, obviously, this is when everything gets back to Mealtime.
Right.
They're gonna be like, hell no, you can't sit in my class. Are you crazy?
You're crazy.
Oh man, that's kind of tough to even think about. Like, when is it gonna get back to when? Because parents need to, adults, we really need to see this kind of thing. You cannot learn it by just theory or me even talking, us chatting. So
I totally agree. Nothing is better than observing a classroom. And most classrooms love to have observers. So I'm sure they'll welcome that.
I know. We'll see. We'll see when everything reopens and see what it's like. But cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Christina, and taking the time. I'm happy. You're one of those rare people I've reached out to. I was like, oh, I found something I really like. I want to chat with this person. So I'm happy.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy we got to connect. So
yeah, it was really fun. Thank you.
Yep. Cool deal. Well, we'll talk again.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
All right. Coming out of my discussion with Christina, I'm not going to add anything except that if you have any questions or comments for her, she said feel free to reach out to her at Montessori-ish mom@gmail.com. And I will put that on the episode page as well. And that's at Montessori-education.com. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, let me know. If you didn't like it, let me know too. I'm always trying to bring the best that I can here with my guests and with myself too. Well, that's it. So here's to a great day wherever you guys are out there, and adios until next time.